So, welcome to the Messy Film Little Reviews. My name is Leah Touchton. Feel free to give my channel a like and subscribe. All of that is so helpful. Helps me make better art. But basically, what I do is I take pieces of my life, art that I created that reminds me of the film, and I put it together under this review to make it a little more interesting. So, we are talking about The Heart of Dixie, season 3. We last left with Zoe in New York. Rose was so mad. She came to her on a school trip to New York, and it was like, you were supposed to go on the 16th with me, and everybody in town is really mad that you broke the news that you were leaving via email. But Zoe doesn't really care. She's moving in with her boyfriend Joel, who I actually really like, in New York, and she only goes back to Bluebell because Brick won't sign this letter for her to be a doctor in New York, and she ends up interrupting people's prayers with bagels. They are sending Magnolia to boarding school, and Shelby ends up leaving Brick because he is such a dunk. And Annabeth is still with Levon, but Levon's cousin Lily is in town and getting on everyone's nerves. But no one has really seen from George Tucker since he left for his tour with Wayne's ex, who wrote a song about him. And Lemon is with somebody. And Tansy has even moved on with the attorney, which George is like super upset because that's like his nemesis, work nemesis. So irritating for him, super for him. They ask about if the lentils are gluten-free, which is kind of funny. And surprisingly, Lemon is with Meatball. Ugh, gag. And when we do find George, he's looking super rough. Lily is getting rid of any food with food dye. I think she's like hooked up with George. And the lawyer that Tansy is dating is suing Bluebell like 30 counts. But Zoe ends up wanting to stay with her boyfriend because she misses everybody in Bluebell. And Lemon is so embarrassed about Meatball that she just lies and says that she is dating Wayne. And they really just want to get Zoe out of Bluebell. But I don't think Zoe's going to go because she's secure. What's really sad is Joel is actually a really stable relationship for her, and she should not be with Wayne. I really do like Wayne and Lemon's friendship, but the lie does cause her to lose out on a suitor. And poor Zoe's boyfriend, he's allergic to peanuts, and he gets fire ants. She's having a bad time. And Lily is ended up blackmailing George into the relationship. And she's like, I process info better if we hold hands. I'm a tactile learner. So Cricket ends up being the head of the Bells. And then Brick doesn't want Zoe back at the practice, so she starts to see patients discreetly. But George Tucker is like, you have a non-compete clause. So what you're doing is illegal. There's so much cheesy direction with weird eye lines in this episode. I just want to make note. And then we have a woman obsessed with Brick, which is pretty weird. And she kind of explains that, like, he's like, oh, he's just sad that Harvey died. But I don't really know how that would make him a jerk. You would think that would make him less of a jerk because this is, like, the only person left of Harvey. I don't think it's a good enough excuse. And Lemon ends up quitting the Bells. Total 180, going through so much character growth. And then Lemon goes on this date with somebody who literally equated her with a horse, but she likes the guy because he like helped her with a flat tire. So I mean, Lemon, she's got to pick better people, So Brick hires Zoe, but she has to work her way back up. And then we have the unfortunate truth that Annabelle may not be able to have kids, which is so relatable for me right now. What a journey emotionally. And Levon doesn't really like Joel, Zoe's boyfriend. He like rated one of the books he liked bad, and they have nothing in common. And Joel doesn't really care anyway because he really wants to be friends with Wayne. And most people in town don't like Joel until he ziplines drunk without a harness. And George realizes that, it's not even all Lemon's fault or anybody's fault, but it's mostly Zoe's. And then they start promoting this winter tale. And Annabelle's parents are racist, so she's scared for them to meet Levon, but they end up loving Levon. So Levon has just been trying to like get a baseball team for the town, getting help with Brick to make it happen. And George and Lindley have a little bit of a thing, even though they had a rough start at the beginning. I needed some medical attention. And Levon also tries to be part of the Gazebos of Alabama calendar, but needs Lemon's help to do it. And Zoe and Joel try to find a more permanent place to live, but they find out the perfect place is actually owned by a relative of Zoe's biological father. And Zoe is like a little scared to face her extended family. And Lemon ends up getting an offer due to the success with the Rammer Jammer. And George and Lily continue to grow, but George still is like so hurt that she has to kind of process all that he's been through. So Zoe ends up going to meet her family, Big Wilkes, but she lies for some reason and says that Joel is a magician, which is crazy. And Lemon gets this offer to want fancies, which is like perfect for her. And Annabelle, who is so worried, she wants her parents want Levon to marry her. And it ends up that no one out the Wilkes likes Zoe. And she turned the Rammer Jammer into a weird cafe where they like lie and say like, oh, we wrote a book about Wayne's way of, relaxing worked better or whatever. And I do think it's a little weird in Zoe and Joel's relationship that like she's a doctor and she's dating an artist, but I do think she like appreciates creativity or like somebody who has like a low key job. Because I think part of her like wanted that, right? She only really became a doctor to impress her one dad that wasn't really her dad. Shelby is pregnant, and Levon gets a little bit mad that George is dating Lillian. And her grandma is interested in one of Zoe's family members and ends up like ruining her dating. And her great uncle does movie impressions. And we find out that it's not Brick. Shelby was artificially inseminated. And Lemon's grandma was excited for a baby. Lemon's grandma is like, I'm excited for you guys to get this baby right, which is like, oof, it's so mean. And then Zoe ends up bonding with her cousin, who is a little bit mad because she didn't get to know her for 2 years, and like honestly really doesn't have an excuse for that. Like, why didn't you think about that? You're literally a doctor, like you know about biology. And then Wayne ends up talking to the cousin and is flirting, which is awkward. And Shelby admits that she's pretty scared of birth. And Fillmore is trying to merge with Bluebell because it's bankrupt. The town is going crazy about that. Zoe ends up giving her blessing to Wayne about her cousin, which is pretty big. But she doesn't really like how much Joel and Wayne hang out because it interferes with Joel's writing. And Levon is trying to like use coaching the track team to avoid talking to Annabeth, and Lemon wants Brick to start dating again. And George and Lindley kind of talk about if they want to talk to Levon about their feelings for each other. And Zoe meets Joel's grandmother and her parental uncle, and her and Joel's relatives kind of bond and start romancing. Which is a little weird, but it is the South and things happen there. So Tansy thinks Lulu is very crazy and Zoe's not very creative. And she made the Cell musical because Shelby needed help with her cabaret. Well, really, she asked Brick first, and then he was too overwhelmed, so he asked Zoe. And he wanted to tank the show, was his ulterior motive. That's why he asked Zoe, and he wanted to get Shelby to leave. But when Shelby realizes that the production is lousy, she saves the day. But I don't know. I like the Cell musical. Honestly, thought it was really great. Love it. Shelby really does have a great voice. I mean, she's Elle Woods and Legally Blonde. And I love that she's pregnant, honestly. Zoe, Stinking Coli song, Big Spender. Her voice is also very good. And they end up trying to declare Bluebell historic, which is interesting. I don't really know a lot of the other history of this town. It's kind of buried in the show, but sure. Levon thinks that the town merger is inevitable, but the Bells kind of help him out. They're like, we can get the governor's sister. She loves cabaret. And Lindley grows kind of jealous of George's relationship with Tansy, who thinks that she's crazy, as I said. And Wade is really excited about his relationship with Vivian, Zoe's cousin, but she starts canceling his dates. And she's a single mom, so she's just like, this is just too much. And so Zoe and Joel are still looking for a place to live and win a place that they like, you know what I mean? And anyway, they find so many places, but Winifred hates New Yorkers, so she won't meet Zoe, which that's so real to the South, honestly. So that's Vivian's aunt, but she hates them, so, and they are both New Yorkers, so it's not going to happen. But Vivian's son doesn't even warm up to Wade either, so they're like, okay, listen, we will talk to the Wicks family, we'll help each other, I'll help you with my cousin's son, and you help me with the grandmother, not a New Yorker. And Tansy and Lulu's friends broke up, her and Scooter, and Lulu ends up messing up her hair, and Shelby and Brick find their way back to each other. I kind of like those two crazy kids together, I'm going to be so honest with you. They're good for each other. And Wade loses Vivian's son Harley's lizard. Zoe ends up taking the fall, but she loses her chance at the apartment, which is like her true love with Wade, you know what I mean? And Wade then comes clean to Harley, and he's so mad that Wade lost his lizard. He's like, you're not going to get with my mom, I'm going to break you up. And then Lindley gets really jealous about Tansy, and she and George break up. And Shelby's pregnancy, Lieutenant Governor, is the father of the baby, but she is going to leave Bluebell to raise the child with him, even though, like, she really still loves Brick. So Joel is following Wade around for research for his book, and George is afraid that Levon is mad at him for what happened with Lindley. Annabeth is throwing a bachelor party for Belle, and that's making her examine her own relationship with Levon because she wants to be married, even though she can't have kids. And Zoe bets Brick that she can get the town to lose weight, and that she'll become partner again. But she loses the bet because Cricket throws a cake sale fundraiser, and George starts to rekindle things with Tansy. I don't mind George and Tansy together. But Wayne ends up selling Winifred on Zoe, and Zoe sells Cousin's son on Wayne. So Bluebell gets a historic status because Tom's grandma's toilet was Andrew Jackson's, which is so funny to me. And also, like, I can't even imagine what that toilet looks like. And the cousin's kid, Harley, still is mad that Wayne lost his salamander. It wasn't technically a lizard, sorry about that. And Wayne, like, tries to replace it, but he knows it's not that, and so he still hates Wayne. And then because Bluebell is historic, Shelby still wants to raise the baby there. She doesn't want to go to Montgomery. Lulu and George break up, and Zoe and Joel buy a house. But Zoe's still stressed because she's trying to get her practice back, and obviously she lost the bet about losing weight. And Joel is like fixing up the house himself. Sometimes he delivers things like so over the top. And then Joel is like getting into fights. And Tom wants alpacas, but Wanda doesn't want them. And they're like telling Levon this and not him first. Wanda's trying to like seek advice about how to get out of this alpaca situation, but I think having alpacas would be kind of cool. And Annabeth is not the love of Levon's life, so they break up, which is devastating to me. So Zoe and Joel, they're living in this house. Tansy and George kiss. Annabeth, on her breakup rampage, replaces Cricket at the head of the Bells. And then we have Zoe's mom coming back. Of course, it's been a minute. We got to have her in. Our mean mother. She was going to allow Joel to throw her a birthday party to help cheer him up, but now that her mom's back, it's and then Vivian really wants to meet Wayne's dad, but Wade is like, I don't know, my dad's like, kind of a huge mess. And George wants to prove to Tansy that Scooter has not changed, like that she needs to wake up and leave him. But Zoe's mom feels pretty left out of her life. And Scott's really fooling a lot of people, including Tansy and George, that he's becoming like this nice environmental lawyer and whatever. And Zoe's mom wants to move to Bluebell because she doesn't want the Wilkes to just win her over. And Lemon wants to put jail with like Carter Covington, but she kind of like falls in love with her chauffeur. And Magnolia gets kicked out of boarding schools because she stole the dean's car to pick up a 19-year-old boy. Very Magnolia. Kind of getting what the grandmother said, but it still doesn't make it right. So Zoe's mom does the pub, and she messes up the dashboard. And she uses like Heath to try to get a walk-in closet. And she goes after Brick too hard. And she hasn't been that close to anybody since she like ran a president race in the 5th grade, but she ends up leaving, which is probably for the best because it's just such a chaotic presence. And I think Zoe definitely needs the space for her, you know what I mean? She like tried to get the practice back for Zoe running this ruthless campaign against Brick. And Magnolia is asking for legal help since she was expelled from the school from George. The Truitt brothers end up suing for negligence because they fell off the ladder, but they lose suit because they didn't have injuries. And Lemon's 2 suitors duel, but Meatball says he once killed somebody a bunch with like no arms, but Levon is dueling too. And then Joel goes to LA for a movie, but he makes her do this Emily Bronte striptease for him, which I'm into. I'm unfortunately into. The show starts getting really sexy this next season, so buckle up. Joe kind of hired some unreliable workers. Those are the Truitt brothers that they try to sue for. And then Levon organized the Bluebell Renaissance Fair to help keep everyone busy, but nobody really wants to buy tickets, and that's how he like kind of uses Lemon Suitors as like the main event to joust. And Wayne is still being sabotaged by Vivian's son, which is no fun. And Joel and Zoe are a bit nervous because if Joel's going to LA for a movie, 75% of long-distance relationships don't work. And Lemon really wants fancies, but she goes to the Lillian Singer girl who ends up getting it, but she convinces her that it's haunted so that she can grab it. Zoe and Joel are frustrated too by all the snags they keep running into while trying to remodel their new home. And Rose persuades Levon that Bluebell cannot be sister cities, or can be sister cities with this town in France. And Lemon wants George to help her out with getting fancy. Wayne ends up kind of having to play peacemaker because obviously with like Lillian, she has like a thing for him still and hates George, you know, on principle, and I think also just hates women in general. And Brick wants to become Bluebell's Man of the Year, which is a bit goofy, but weirdly with all of his like grumpiness, they love him at Bluebell. And so Zoe thinks that Levon and her are cursed and they need to fix the past. And Harley, Vivian's son, asked Wade for advice. And he was super happy to help, but it's not like the best advice because it's literally Wayne, you know what I mean? I can't believe this man's gonna be a father. George and Lemon are trying to avoid each other because they kind of had a spark, but now they're like business partners. And Annabeth gets really frustrated with one of Brick's patients, but she ends up kind of relaxing when she learns a little bit more about him. But yeah, Joel breaks up because the long distance is too hard, which is hard for Zoe. I feel really bad because she really liked Joel, but we knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. We knew you're not going to be in the South, and then the New Yorker takes it. It was never going to happen. And because Lemon and George are in business, they end up hooking up, and then Zoe tries to hook them up forever, feeling guilt, but George is like, listen, you know, I want to be a silent partner, but I did enjoy, like, you know, having sex with you. And Zoe thinks that the reason Levon and her are cursed is because they broke up the wedding. And Annabeth starts finding love in the nephew of the mayor of Fillmore, which is good for her. I still want her and Levon together, but it's fine. And Wayne ends up getting Vivian's son a black eye because he gives advice about like how his father thinks he's a bouncer reference, but he just ended up bonding, so it's totally fine. But unfortunately, Vivian is going to end up choosing Charles, her son's dad, which is like, you know, hard competition. It's always going to be that way. And Lemon doesn't end up going with Peter. She doesn't want to settle down. But the Bells are not really supporting the town, and Zoe just ends up selling the house. So went through all of that for nothing, but also I would get it. Like, when you buy a place with a person and then it's your own, it's a little hard. So Zoe and Lemon end up bonding. They get some girlfriend advice from each other. And Levon wants the county fair to be in Bluebell, but it's hard for him to focus because Annabeth is now dating, obviously, that nephew. And Magnolia tricks her dad, Brick, to get away from the house so she can throw a house party. Vivian is also leaving for Baton Rouge, and George has sex and fancies and gets caught. What a silent business partner in my butt. And Wanda and Tom are trying to have a baby. But Annabeth's parents do not like her new boyfriend. They want her back with Levon. I so hear you. Of course, Zoe found herself in the middle of Wayne and Vivian's relationship, which is super awkward because she still kind of obviously has feelings for Wayne. And Levon and Annabelle's tensions are getting worse and really affecting the town. And Lemon gets really upset because she receives a less than perfect health inspection, but she devises a plan to get it changed. And the person that George had in a fair with at Fancy's was a Bible school teacher, which is crazy. That is the show now. So Wayne's dad asks Zoe for help for her love life, but Wayne is like, there's nothing good gonna happen from that. Like, don't do this. Zoe and George get stranded because this guy steals their truck, but they end up bonding again. And Wayne is kind of like, I don't know, I might move to Atlanta to open another Rammer Jammer, which is like, what? Levon gets George to help persuade the city controller to change Bluebell's billing to an exit sign, but he's again in competition with his rival, Mayor Gainley. And Lemon is still trying to raise Fancy's profile, but it's not really working. And Zoe keeps trying to be Wayne's friend, but there's more to it. There's more to it because we all know how it's going to end up. And Wayne is also just like really, deciding to leave Bluebell, going to go to Atlanta, which honestly, I think kind of Wade should. Honestly, he needs to broaden his future. He's been there like his entire life. And Levon and George meet their hero, Dawn Todd, who like helps put their perspective in life more clearly. And Lemon's grandma is like, listen, you need to like fall in love. You need to find a suitable husband. And Annabeth is trying to picture her future with the mayor of Fillmore, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's Levon. We know it's Levon. Just be with Levon. You know what I mean? But anyway, Lemon's Fancy is doing weddings, and she's getting Annabeth's help, but Meatball is still there. And Joel even comes up, and her grandma and a Welk, so it's a crazy little wedding party. That's all that. And Joel comes back, but he knows that Zoe's in love with Wayne, and Meatball wears this camo suit. And Lee and his wife is wearing like the tuxedo shirts, which is just very funny. Very goofy. And then Zoe tells Wayne at the wedding, but Wayne leaves, and later is like, listen, we're never going to work. Like, we would have worked beforehand if we were going to. And then Cricket is gay, which was a stunning, amazing confession. I loved it. And she admits it at their 10-year vow renewal at Fancy's. But Wayne ends up not going because they ended up wanting him to work at a desk job with the Rammer Jammer, and he's like, if no. And George goes to tell Lemon, and so does Levon, that they still have feelings for each other, which is like, stupid. Both of them need to get over her, but I mean, I'm kind of with her for Milan, but I like Levon and Annabeth way more. Like, it's so much better. But it's too late. She got on a cruise to get engaged, as encouraged by her grandmother. So we will see what happens next season. That is it for season 3. Sorry, I'm recording this at my boyfriend's house, and he does not live alone, so I'm trying to be respectful. But if you guys liked this, let me know in the comments below what your favorite moments of Heart of Dixie season 3 were. I think I honestly did really like her with Joel together, and I do like that the town is getting like more crazy characters and goofier, and some things happening, but I still think my favorite season is season 1, because there's just like things were way more thought out. I feel like now like there's all sorts of mix-ups, and the breakups this season were like very annoying to me, like not how I wanted things to be shipped. But let me know what you think, and it would mean so much if you follow and subscribe down below. That really helps me make my art very well, and if you have the means to donate, that is so much appreciated. All those links will be down below. Have a great one. Bye.